Hello and welcome along to Donington Park and race 1 of the UK Touring Car Series by Overtake.gg. In pole position we have Edward Rocket, in second position we have Dan Rock, for third on the grid Steve Legale, fourth on the grid Steve Kenwood, fifth on the grid Roy Magnus, sixth on the grid Hartmut Schmatzberger, seventh on the grid Paddy Breslin, eighth is Daniel Uff, and in ninth position on the grid is Rich Jamison Smith. And start goes, and a very late start for Edward Rocket there. In pole position, and look at Hartmut coming up, and there is a bit... So everybody's off. Magnus is off, Kenwood is off, Rocket is off. I think Dan Rock is off as well. So Hartmut Schmatzberger goes straight up into first position. There we have it again in replay. Looking back from Dan Rock. Great start for Magnus in the back. But it gets kind of blocked in by Rocket. And there is a touch between Schmatzberger and Legale, and Magnus goes off the road as a result of that. Edward Rocket goes off all on his own, that's the same as Dan Rock. There we have it again on board from Steve Kenwood. You can see Legale and Magnus coming up to the right there, and across the road, and Steve Kenwood is the innocent bystander in all of this. Getting swatted off the road by the backwards Astra of Magnus. This is at the end of lap 1. Magnus trying to go past Dan Rock on the inside into the chicane. And makes the move, but has a bad exit of the chicane. A little bit of lag there as well, and that also allows Edward Rocket coming up through to the inside. And he goes past both of them. So Rocket then up to 7th position. Lap 3, Rocket is still moving up the field. Big slide there from Steve Legale in the Ford. And that will allow Rocket to go around on the on the outside. Out of the old hairpin. And cleanly passed into McLean's. Lap 4, Magnus in the Astra. Dan Rock in the BMW. I think Rock runs a little bit wide, yep, and Magnus in the Astra can hold a bit of a tighter line and makes the move stick down the Craners. At the end of the lap, we have Honda on Honda action here, with Rocket going past Jamison Smith on the inside into Coppis. So Edwards' fight back up through the field is really well on. I think that was actually up to 2nd position in the race. And Jamison Smith a little bit wide on the exit of the chicane, and that allows for Steve Legale to come and try to make a move up the inside into Redgate, and he does it. Lap 7 now, Dan Rock. Trying to squeeze up to Jamison Smith, can't quite do that, and has an awkward drive through the chicane, and that opens the door for Magnus in the Astra again. Coming up on the outside into Redgate. Can he hold on to it on the outside? Yes, a little bit of a squeeze, but on the boost and past. And that is pretty much everything that happens in race 1. Here is Hartmut Schmatzberger. He wins the race ahead of Edward Rocket. It's 0.3 of a second between them. Steve Legale comes in 3rd. Roy Magnus in 4th. That's 0.3 between them. Rich Jamison Smith in 5th. Dan Rock finishes in 6th. Paddy Breslin in 7th. Daniel Uff in 8th position. And Steve Kenwood did retire from the race. And that is also the grid for race 2. Hartmut Schmatzberger starts in pole position ahead of Edward Rocket. Steve Legale in 3rd, Roy Magnus in 4th, Rich Jamison Smith in 5th, Dan Rock in 6th, Paddy Breslin in 7th and Daniel Oaf in 8th start position. There we go, lights out. It's a good clean start from the front row of the grid. A good start by Daniel Oaf in the background there as well in the Ford. We got Legale and Magnus going side by side down the craners. No, not quite. Tucks in behind. However, into the old hairpin. Seems like the Astra is a bit more racy down the hill, and through he goes up into 3rd position then. Another replay then from on board with Dan Oaf. It's a brilliant start by Paddy Breslin. He gets blocked off by Jameson Smith, who has a less optimal of a start. Up to the inside of Dan Rock as well into Red Gate, but well, Rock can hold the momentum going on the outside and stays with the position. Here we're on board with Steve Kenwood, who I forgot on the lineup because I think we didn't record it in time. He's behind Paddy Breslin here. Oh, and Dan Oaf goes off. Dan Oaf is off in the Ford. And back to the front of the field. Here is Rocket lining up a move on Schmatzberger into the chicane at the end of the lap. Yes, cleanly through. A great move, and early on the boost on the exit as well to try to get away. Here comes Magnus in the Astra. Up to the outside, he made that move work on Dan Rock in race 1, but has to back out of it now because Hartmut has a little bit more speed coming out of the corner. But he hangs on to the rear bumper, a big slide. And Schmatzberger runs wide, and Magnus through on the outside. So pretty much the same thing he did on Legale in the first lap. And Rocket goes wide in lap 3. Rocket goes wide into McLean's. That opens up for Magnus, but he outbrakes himself in Coppice and goes off into the gravel, and Steve Legale is off even further into the gravel in Coppice. And here comes Dan Rock as well. Dan Rock moves up into 3rd position and past Magnus in the Astra. We move to lap 6. This is Schmatzberger and Rock. Dan Rock trying to come up on the inside into the chicane. Lining up the move, late on the brakes, and through he goes. That's a great move. However, it seems like Hartmut has a better exit out of the chicane there in the Honda. Can't quite make a move into Redgate, into turn 1. However, Rock seems to run a little bit wide, and that opens up the door side by side down the Craner curves. No, Hartmut backs out of it. Thinks better of it. It's probably for the best. So Rock keeps his 2nd position for now. A little bit of a gap between them now. A bit of a gap down to Magnus in 4th position there as well. But Rock runs wide into McLean's. And that opens up the door for Hartmut again. Schmatzberger up to the inside into Coppice. Little bit of a squeeze and a bit of a touch, but through he goes. And that is up to 2nd position. And here we're following Paddy Breslin in the Hyundai and Rich Jameson Smith. This is for 7th position into lap 10. And Jameson Smith goes through into Redgate. However, he is a bit wide. Runs a bit wide. Opens the door for Breslin to get back by, but Paddy just can't quite do that. And then at the end of the lap again, this is Dan Rock lining up another move on Hartmut into the chicane, just like he did a couple of laps earlier. Does he keep the momentum going now to fend off any any return favor from Hartmut? It looks so. at least for now. Yeah, he holds on. Lap 11 now. This is the battle of the Steves. Steve Legale ahead of Steve Kenwood. This is for 5th position going into the old hairpin. Oh, looks like Legale is running wide again. He's done that a couple of times, and through goes Steve Kenwood in the Hyundai. A good move again. And again it seems like Legale is struggling a little bit into the old hairpin. And there we have the conclusion of race 2. Edward Rocket takes a commanding win in race 2. 9 seconds clear of Dan Rock. Hartmut Schmatzberger in 3rd, Roy Magnus in 4th, Steve Kenwood in 5th, Steve Legale in 6th position, Rich Jameson Smith in 7th, Paddy Breslin finish in 8th position, and Danoff is he did retire out of the race quite early on. And then for race number 3 we will turn this result list on its head. And we will see here, yep, Paddy Breslin in pole position and for race 3, last race of the evening, ahead of Rich Jameson Smith in the Honda, Steve Legale in the Ford starting 3rd, Steve Kenwood in the Hyundai in 4th position, Roy Magnus in the Vauxhall Astra in 5th, Opel Astra, Hartmut Schmatzberger in 6th in the Honda, Dan Rock in 7th in the BMW, and Edward Rocket, in the Honda, rounding off the field. And away we go, and that's a great start again from Paddy Breslin. It looks like it's three wide in the background going into turn 1. No, not quite, but 3 wide on the corner exit. Magnus on the inside on the Astra. Made it past Jameson Smith. And tries to go outside of Steve Kenwood down into the old hairpin. Has the inside line for the old hairpin and keeps the position. Moves up to 3rd position then from 5th on the grid. Here comes Schmatzberger and Steve Kenwood latches onto the rear bumper, and it looked like Steve Legale was running wide there through McLean's, and that allows Magnus to have a run in and through Coppis onto the inside, lining up a move down towards the chicane. Yeah, should have it. He is a little bit to the front, brakes later and goes through, and Steve Kenwood is also allowed through because he's following in the same lines, and as does Hartmut Schmatzberger. Oh, a little bit of a kiss to both Steve Legale and Steve Kenwood there from Schmatzberger. And Steve Legale is a little wide into Redgate, and that allows Edward Rocket to go through as well. So that's down from, what was it, 2nd position down to 6th position then for Steve Legale on the course of a lap. Now this is at the end of the lap. Paddy Breslin still in the lead. Magnus has a better exit out of the chicane into lap 3. Heavy defending from Breslin. There's still a shape, or the whole size of an Astra on the inside, and through goes Magnus there, up into the lead of the race. Now this is Steve Kenwood and Hartmut Schmatzberger and Edward Rocket out of the chicane. And Edward is at the same time as the pass happened for the lead. Rocket goes through into 4th position and around the outside of Steve Kenwood into Redgate. And now he has a great run on Hartmut Schmatzberger down the Craney curves towards the old hairpin. Seems a lot more stable, the car, as they're catching up behind Breslin. That's a big slide by Schmatzberger into McLean's. Not quite enough for Rocket to make a move on that. And Steve Kenwood is also hanging on to the rear bumper of Rocket there. Now lining up a pass down into the chicane on Schmatzberger. Using the boost and through on the inside, but there's a little bit of a touch in the middle of the chicane. That allows Schmatzberger through, back through again. Here comes Steve Kenwood on the outside and Steve Legale on the inside into Redgate. And Rocket holds on. There is enough space between the cars there to hold on to the position. But both Steves were really ready to pounce there on Rocket, who had a bad exit because of that little touch. And immediately Rocket is back on the attack. All over the rear bumper of Hartmut, and there's an opening on the inside, but it gets to the outside then from McLean's. That doesn't work. However, it looks like Hartmut might run a bit wide. No, not quite enough. Still not quite enough. And Steve Kenwood then is immediately back on the rear bumper of Edward Rocket. And again, down towards the chicane. Not quite close enough to make a move this time. However, Schmatzberger is quite close to Paddy Breslin for second position. Goes up onto the outside into lap 5 now to try to attack Breslin into Redgate. And can hold on to it, can he? Yes, it seems like it. And Dan Rock is off in the background. And here comes Edward Rocket as well, down to the inside through the cranny curves, and he's passed well in time before the old hairpin. And Rocket goes straight back onto the attack, onto the rear bumper of Hartmut Schmatzberger up ahead, as Steve Kenwood is trying to jump on to get by Breslin. He does so into McLean's, but runs wide. Breslin comes back. Paddy retakes his position there. And up ahead, I think Rocket has just done enough up ahead to get by Schmatzberger. Yes, he has, up into second position. Well, and before the braking zone for the chicane. Right, we're on lap 6 now, on board with Steve Kenwood. We're following Paddy Breslin, and Rocket runs wide. Breslin has a bit of a tank slapper into the old hairpin. And where does Rocket rejoin the track? Oh, that slides just across the road. But there is enough time for Kenwood to understand what's going on and can take appropriate action. And here comes Rocket again, immediately onto the attack again. He's been by far the most attacking driver of this evening. Edward Rocket through on Steve Legale into the chicane. And straight onto the rear bumper of Paddy Breslin. And we're only on lap 7 out of 14. And Breslin really defends into Redgate, but he runs wide on the exit, and through goes Edward Rocket. Says, thank you very much, that position is mine. And here comes Steve Legale and Dan Rock then. Everybody's lining up to try to jump Paddy to take his position. Can't quite do it. And Legale is running wide. That allows Dan Rock a move up into the inside into Coppis. Cleanly through in the middle of the corner. It looks like Legale is trying to move back. No, can't quite do it. Jump forward on the lap. This is Dan Rock again with Steve Legale just behind Paddy Breslin. And Breslin runs a little bit wide. Can he keep the momentum? Kind of looks like he does. And here comes Steve Legale on Dan Rock instead. Down towards the chicane. Seems like it's backing out of it. And Breslin with a really bad exit. Really bad chicane all over. And again, side by side behind him. This is Rock. Dan Rock through to the inside. Oh, and a big slide for Breslin on the braking into Redgate. And Rock has a bad exit. And here comes Breslin down the outside down the craning curves. That'll be inside for this one, but then outside for the old hairpin, and he backs out of it. Dan Rock gets by. Lap 11 now. This is Steve Kenwood defending from Edward Rocket. Well, it's not, maybe not that much of a defense. Yeah, no, it runs a bit wide. Can't quite turn in because Edward Rocket is on his inside into Redgate, and through Rocket goes again. Up to third position. Now this is Steve Legale again on Paddy Breslin down the back straight into the chicane. Well and truly passed through the chicane. And here comes Rich Jameson Smith on the exit. Running wide. Taking the high line into Redgate. Tries to stick it through the outside there, but can't quite keep the momentum going. Runs a little bit wide and has to stay behind. We will move forward one lap, and he tries to do the exactly same thing. This is on the penultimate lap of the race. Now tries to cut underneath into Redgate, but hits the rear bumper of Paddy Breslin, and now that's stops the momentum, and he has to stay behind. Down through Hollywood into the old hairpin. He hasn't quite given up on that position yet. And this race with the reverse grid has really turned out to be properly entertaining. Now it takes height into McLean's to try to get a better exit, and he does so. Can he go through to the inside into Coppice? Yes, he does, but he runs wide and Paddy goes back through, so Breslin keeps his position. Great fight, but has to slot in behind. And while all of that is going on, here is Schmatzberger on Magnus, who is still in the lead in the Astra. Big slide into the old hairpin. That opens up for Schmatzberger to try to make a move, but can't make a move to the inside, and all the momentum is killed. Moving into McLean's. Oh, and Schmatzberger runs a little bit wide. Can't keep the momentum going up into Coppice. Has to back out of it. And look who's lurking up there, sneaking his way ever so close in third position. That's Edward Rocket. Now into lap 14 and last lap of the race. We're in McLean's, and Hartmut is trying to line up, get a better exit, and out of the corner up into Coppice. Can't quite do it. And again, it looks like Magnus can keep a tighter line on the corner exit. And they're all on the they're all on the hybrid boost down the back straight. Nobody does quite gain enough. So just keeping it tight and through the last chicane. That should be enough for Roy Magnus to take the win, and it does. Ahead of Hartmut Schmatzberger in second, Edward Rocket in third, 0.6 of a second separating top three. Then Steve Kenwood in fourth. Dan Rock finishes in fifth position. Steve Legale in sixth, and Paddy Breslin in 7th, Rich Jameson Smith finished the race in 8th position, and there's only 2.5 tenths between those two as well there for 8th and 7th and 8th position. And with all of that done then, here is the point standings after the end of the first round. Hartmut Schmatzberger and Edward Rocket on 52 points each. Roy Magnus in third with 46, Dan Rock in fourth with 38 points, Steve Legale in fifth position with 35 points, Rich Jameson Smith in 6th with 28, Paddy Breslin in 7th with 26, Steve Kenwood in 8th position with 24 points. And that was everything we have from Donington Park. Thank you so much for watching, and join us next time around when we will be going to Brands Hatch Indy for round number 2 of the UK Touring Car Series at overtake.gg.